I want to clarify a couple of things to begin with. First of all, very importantly, I'm not claiming, and I think the motion isn't claiming, that theists, believers in God, are automatically and universally and always truly moral people. Theists are sinners, and some are very bad sinners. This has become very evident to us in Ireland over the last while. What the motion does entail is that if and when theists and others are truly moral, they are morally good only because, amongst other things, God exists. If God does not exist, theists cannot be truly moral at all. No one can. Also, I want to make this clear too. The motion does not entail that atheists cannot be moral. If I really thought that, it would be very foolish of me to come here tonight, putting my life in danger from necessarily wicked atheists. No, I merely wish to argue that atheists can be moral, but can only be moral because there is a God, and could not be moral if there were no God. Truly moral. I also wish to go a bit further than that, though. I wish to argue also that if a person denies the existence of God and is logical, he or she will find it harder, or perhaps even impossible, to grasp certain aspects of true morality. For example, such a person will find it hard or even impossible to recognise the immense intrinsic value of each and every human being at every stage of his or her life. It's impossible to account adequately for true morality if there is no God. If there is no God, then the universe is originally and ultimately mindless and purposeless. One of the world's most famous contemporary atheists, Richard Dawkins, has put it very well. Quote, "The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference." How could such a universe, as described by Dawkins, ground true morality? One important thing such a universe simply could not account for is the objective and intrinsic dignity and worth of every single human being. Without a God as the infinitely wise and loving creator of each human being, made in his image and likeness, as the Bible tells us, we cannot say confidently that each and every human being is valuable in him or herself, and therefore to be respected and protected and treated well, just for what he or she is. If God does not exist, we can only find people valuable and good because we choose to do so. We make up human dignity and worth, so to speak. This means that those human beings who are not valued or wanted by anyone, or at least not by anyone close to hand, can be treated as not valuable and not possessing any inherent worth or intrinsic dignity. Hence we have, for example, the widespread and horrible reality of millions of abortions of unwanted human beings. Also we have the immoral use and destruction of human embryos in experiments and artificial human reproduction. It's hard to recognise how such immoral actions, and indeed any deliberate killing of innocent human beings, can be always wrong if we humans are simply the product of a mindless and purposeless process. Perhaps this might explain why so many atheists and others consider such actions to be morally right, at least sometimes. They are being logical atheists. But of course, if we are simply the product of a mindless, purposeless, blind, indifferent and amoral process, then any time we treat another human being as a person with dignity, a person with rights, we are acting in a way that's not really grounded in any objective reality. We are engaging in a kind of moral wishful thinking. We are creating morality, not discovering its objective and transcendent reality based on God. One recent atheist scholar, Dale Mackey, called one of his books, Ethics, Inventing Right and Wrong. This is morality in a godless universe. However, any so-called morality that can be and must be created or invented at will can be changed at will too. It has no stability, so how can it ground moral obligation? There is here a reduction of true morality to a mere conventionalism. This is merely following the present rules and mores of the group, following the crowd. This is moral relativism, not true morality. True morality, by contrast, is constituted by obligation based on moral principles and rules that call for our respect and adherence because they are objectively true and universally binding. Morality, as convention, is simply too weak to be true morality. Because it lacks an objective and transcendent standard, it cannot account for moral progress or the constant need for moral reform. It cannot explain why it is not enough simply to follow the crowd. The common human conviction is that the mores and conventions of the crowd are under a higher standard, a higher law, the, quote, law of natures and nature's God, to quote the American Declaration of Independence. Morality as convention cannot account for our deeply held conviction, held by theist and atheist alike at our best, that justice is not purely man-made, but a transcendent standard that holds all men and women to account and judges all our laws and policies and actions. But such transcendent justice cannot exist if God does not exist. The philosopher Kant realised this, and he realised that our motivation to be moral, especially when it is difficult and painful to be morally good, as it often is weakened terribly if we do not hold the conviction that there is a God who is the creator and judge of all. As a Christian, I would of course add that I believe God is the saviour and forgiver of all too, not just our judge. We need more than justice, we need mercy too. Many contemporary atheists try to account for morality by invoking biological evolution as its basis, as a kind of a substitute for God. So, for them, morality is a product of our evolution. It is the behaviour that enabled us to survive as a species. At its worst, this reduces morality to the survival of the fittest, which is in truth a kind of anti-morality. Even at its best, however, this evolution-based morality is not adequate. You cannot get morality from biology alone. No mere physical science or reality can account for or ground ethical principles and norms. That some behaviours have helped the species to survive does not entail that one ought to do anything as such. A mere physical is cannot ground a moral ought. The atheist philosopher David Hume realised this. Another common reduction of morality is reduction of morality to pragmatism, or even to a kind of narrow prudential expediency. This is all that evolution-based morality is, really. But true morality is not a mere prudential expediency. A universe without God seems to be a purely material reality. Materialism is a very poor philosophy, in particular in its inability to account for morality. For example, it cannot explain or even recognise the reality of human free will. This is very clear in the radio debate between Richard Dawkins and David Quinn on the Ryan Tubridy show a couple of years ago. In it, Dawkins was totally flummoxed by Quinn's persistent questioning concerning how atheistic materialism could account for human free will. As an atheist, Dawkins simply could not account for it. But without free will, there cannot be true morality. We can account for free will, of course, if there is more to reality than the material, and especially if there is a spiritual God who is personal and who has created humankind in his image and likeness, including the ability to make free choices. We should remember that it is our free will that enables us, atheists and theists alike, to be truly moral beings. Whenever a theist or atheist grasps correctly a moral truth, a principle or a norm, he or she is grasping God's will. God has created an ordered and intelligible universe. This creation includes men and women as persons who are intrinsically valuable and thus to be valued. God's will is that we should always act completely reasonably in a manner that loves all that is good, true and beautiful. Christian theists and many others too understand God-based morality not as a set of arbitrary commands. Christians understand God to be a wise and loving creator who grounds morality in his own nature as wise and loving. In being morally good, we're being godlike, sharing in his providential care for his creation. So true morality is not an arbitrary imposition, but a gift from God. True morality is present whenever we are thinking honestly, consistently and properly. And thus God is the basis for all of us being able to be truly moral. Thank you very much.